Welcome back to the Bluegrass on this beautiful December evening. I have No Name, my American field-bred Labrador Retriever, out mentoring Tallulah, who I call the potato, who is a White English Labrador Retriever. Now, I know for you fellas in England, you're going to tell me, you're going to say, Stoney, there's no such thing as an English Labrador Retriever. Look, in America, how people refer to dogs is kind of like this. They say an American Labrador Retriever when they're referring to kind of a big, leggy dog that loves to fetch and is bred specifically to do hunting work or field trial work. Okay, so in other words, a working Labrador Retriever. And an English Labrador Retriever is a bench bred or a show bred dog that's bred just to be a kind of a happy, outgoing family dog, right? Now, the difference kind of is going to boil down to between the American and English is the American dogs love to fetch. They're bigger and rangier, and like, you know, most people at least would say that they're not as pretty as the English dogs. The English dogs are very pretty because they have a nice blocky head, a blocky chest, kind of a square posture, an otter tail, and big feet, right? And so, like, whenever you're looking at Labrador Retrievers, kind of the ones that jump out at you are the English, what people in America will refer to as the English Labrador Retrievers, or what people in other parts of the world will refer to simply as show Labrador Retrievers, okay? And the reason that they look better is because they're bred specifically to look good to win in the show ring. Now, the American dogs, or the hunting bred dogs, and it doesn't matter if it's America or Canada or Mexico or England, right? The hunting bred dogs, they're not bred to look a certain way, they're bred to act a certain way, okay? Now, so we're going to talk about that in this video today, about the kind of the differences in Labrador Retrievers, and I'm going to go back and show you a little footage from over at the kennel where I compared 3 yellow Labrador Retrievers, because what a white Labrador Retriever is actually is a yellow Labrador Retriever that just has very little pigment in its coat. Okay, and that's a very important thing to understand, guys, because like when you talk about labs, there's basically the 3 recognized colors. You have black, you have yellow, and you have chocolate. But then you have kind of versions of yellow and chocolate. And, you know, I'm not really into versions of stuff. I'm a very black and white kind of person, so you'll hear me say a lot of times, all dogs want to be labs, but all labs want to be black. And so, you know, in your comments below, whatever your opinions is, just always know that that's my default opinion, right? Now, but like really popular dogs nowadays are white Labrador Retrievers, okay? And now a true white Labrador Retriever, in terms of like what's kind of a good one, would be a Labrador Retriever that's a yellow lab that just has very little pigment in its coat, but it has pigment in its skin. Okay, in other words, it has a black nose, it has black around its eyes, and its skin's got plenty of pigment. Okay, now you have other kinds of Labrador Retrievers that are white, but they're not right exactly. Okay, you have kind of albinos, right, and they just have, their bodies produce no pigment, and you have leucidic Labradors whose bodies produce pigment, but the pigment can't migrate throughout the skin like it's supposed to, and so what you'll end up with is they're real pale, and they have like pale noses. You've seen a lot of kind of white Labrador Retrievers that have almost a cherry looking nose, and the problem with that is, guys, is like if you take them out in the summertime much and they're getting much sun on them, their skin can't handle the sun. They kind of get sunburned, okay? So we're going to take just a few minutes and answer some popular questions about white Labrador Retrievers as I sit here and unwind from hiking and playing fetch with all these dogs, and then we'll get to the part of the footage where I did all that stuff. So, you know, hang out and enjoy the video. All right, so here's kind of the questions I've gotten since Tallulah's been showing up on my Instagram. First off, hey Stoney, you know, how are the white labs in terms of their personality? Okay, well, listen, if it's a well-bred white lab, it's acts just like a yellow lab, and a well-bred yellow lab acts almost as good as a black lab. So their personalities are awesome if you get a dog that has a personality that matches your expectations. Now, one of the other things that I get asked a lot is, Stoney, are white Labrador Retrievers expensive? Well, listen, of course they're expensive because, like, there's not very many of them. And anytime that you have something there's high demand and a low supply, well, people get a lot of money for them. And you might say, well, Stoney, are the breeders just making lots and lots of money off of them? Probably not. Most of the dog breeders that I know personally, they never end up making any money off dogs. They spend a lot of money on dogs, but it's just really expensive, guys, to develop a bloodline and maintain bloodline integrity generation after generation, okay? Especially when you're breeding for a very specific quality, like, you know, a lack of pigment in the coat. Now, if you're just breeding for performance, it's much easier because if if a guy down the road has a really good dog and a guy up the road has a really good dog, you breed them together, and you know, like they turn out good dogs. And if you're just breeding for like how well they fit into a family, well, that's another thing that's pretty easy to breed for, right? You know, a guy down the road has a dog that's a good family dog, and a guy up the road has a dog that's a good family dog. You breed them together. Hey, wow, you get some puppies and they're pretty much good family dogs. So No Name's going crazy because my neighbors are shooting guns, and whenever he hears the gun shooting, then of course he thinks he ought to be retrieving something. So like he's like really put out with me that we're still making this video when people have been shooting all day. All right, now, so back to what I was saying. What's hard to do is to breed a dog that has particular personality characteristics, but also looks a very specific way, right? Okay, so if you think about this, like it's really hard to get a Labrador to have the look that makes people stop when you're walking on the street and go, oh my gosh, what a beautiful dog, okay? It's hard to get that nice blocky head and blocky chest and that big fat otter tail and those big feet that people love. It's hard enough to get that. Now imagine you're trying to get that, and those dogs might come out black or yellow, right? But you want to like even further refine the look, and you only want to get dogs that are basically snow white. And look, that snow white dog ended up with No Name's retrieving item, and now she's going to run off and try to get him to chase him. Now later on in the video, when you watch us going on a hike, I go into great detail about the difference in how these showbred or English Labrador Retrievers like approach fetching and how field-bred dogs approach fetching. Okay, so No Name is sitting down there like looking at me because he keeps hearing this gunfire, like, Stonnie, let's run to the gunfire, you know. And Tallulah's oldest thing is run off and expects me to come find him. Now I will go ahead and caution you, if you ever like get an English Labrador Retriever that likes to fetch a little bit, you need two things. You need to chuck it, right? So whenever they bring it back, because they're not good at delivering to hand, they drop your retrieving item on the ground, you can reach down and pick it up, and a flashlight, because it never fails. You can see it's getting dark right now. Whenever we're out, Tallulah loves to take a retrieving item with her, you know, and like I'll play fetch with her a little bit in the dark, like all the dogs, and kind of keeps her motivated to stay close when it's dark. But inevitably, she likes to carry stuff around, but only until I assume that she's going to carry it all the way back to the truck, and then she drops it. And I'm out there with my flashlight looking around for it. Okay, well, I've run out of time because it's kind of dark to go through all the questions, so I'll do that in a separate video. But follow along for the rest of the video because it's super awesome. We go on a hike, but before we go on the hike, I'll jump back to the kennel where I can compare 3 Labrador Retrievers, a white one, a very light pale one, and one that has a lot of pigment but wasn't bred to do anything other than be a family dog. Okay, so we have 3 yellow labs up here. Now one of them's white, one of them's pretty yellow, and one of them's getting more and more yellow by the day. All right, so we're gonna walk them, and I'll just show you kind of what they look like when they're walking. Now these dogs have all been here a similar amount of time, and training them's been, you know, relatively easy. Each of the types of dogs, you have to kind of modify your approach a little bit. Like, see this nice English Lab here. Like, she really, all these little English chubbies, as I call them, the show dogs, they really, really, really love food. And if you look at in the show ring with them, you can always see how they're being manipulated with food. So, guys, if you have a Labrador Retriever that's built like this one, and you want them to mind, really, it's about as simple as doing lots and lots of treat work when they're young until they get in the habit of minding. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice with Tallulah is that she's got kind of the short and squat stature, which makes her sometimes a little, you know, a little less sure-footed than the other dogs. Now, another thing that happens with these English chubbies is that they kind of suffer from what I call the bull in the China parlor syndrome, right? They just kind of knock around, they'll knock into your legs. Want the cameraman? Like when we have 5 or 6 of them out here, we got to be very careful if we have little kids come down or old people. And the cameraman and I are kind of starting to move into that latter stage ourselves, right? So we had to be really careful because these English Labs, they get so excited when they see people and they have so much love to give that they just can't hardly control themselves, you know. But now the neat thing about them is that you don't have to worry about them giving you much trouble if you'll just exercise them, right? So Tallulah is super friendly and super outgoing, and when I have a bunch of this type of dog down here, all we do before clients show up is we do a lot of exercise, and then when the clients get here, we give everybody treats, and we say, hey, look, you know, give those dogs some treats for being calm with them in play. And it works really well, and they're awesome. the neat thing about these dogs, what I think is the neatest thing about these dogs, besides the fact that they're friendly and outgoing, is that they have a ton of energy, but only for about 5 minutes. So this dog lives in the suburbs, you know, and like I know a lot of you guys who have these English dogs, like you feel like they have too much energy, right? Because every time you come in from carpool line or you come in from work, they about knock you down. Guys, it's not that they have too much energy. They just have too much energy in 5-minute bursts. And with a proper energy regulation strategy, like they're super, super easy to manage. So good exercise and a little bit of treat work. And these kind of dogs here basically train themselves. All right, now we'll find another one and walk it, and we'll talk about the different types. All right, now we will walk Seymour. Oh my gosh, Seymour's a good dog. And I don't know if this will show up on the camera. Remember what I was telling you about the bull in the China parlor effect? Right here it is. You know, these English chubbies are very pretentious. You know, they think everything's about them all the time. All right, but now here's Seymour, and I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see this or not. But Seymour, when he first got here, if you go back and look at my Instagram videos, he was pretty white. You know what I'm saying? And now that he's been out in the sun a little bit and he's getting a little bit older, like the pigment's really coming out in his coat. And so over the course of a year, I would anticipate that he's going to develop quite a bit of pigment in his coat and move more and more towards that true yellow color, you know. Up, up, up. Oh, very nice. Now, so one of the things that gets people all the time is they'll buy a dog expecting a certain set of physical and mental characteristics, and in their mind they've built it up to be like exact. You know, but guys, dog breeding it's not an exact science. I mean, it's like rolling dice. You know, even the people that have a reputation for consistently producing the white dogs, they don't all end up white, you know. The hardest thing in the world to do is to get, a yellow lab to be pretty much white, but maintain the pigment in their nose and their skin, right? Okay. Now, we talk about this over at the farm, but like you have albinos, you have lucidics, right? And what an albino is, that's a dog who doesn't produce pigment. Lucidic, a lot of these white labs, or what are sold as white labs, they're what are known as lucidics, and they produce pigment, but they just can't get it where they need it to be. Like, and so what'll happen is you'll see their noses aren't really super black, and around their eyes a lot of times will be pale. Okay, and that creates problems a little bit. Like the dogs. I feel like the dogs get scratched up a little easier. They show scars a little worse. You know. Okay, now I got one more dog here. Let me go find her. That has quite a bit of pigment, and I think as she gets older, she's going to be kind of a deep yellow color. All right, now we're going to walk Bailey, and Bailey has quite a bit of pigment. And we'll stop over here. I'll kind of stretch Bailey out and let you look at her. Now, remember, like I always say, guys, there's lots and lots of different kinds of labs bred every year. And some of them are bred with like a lot of forethought and a lot of, specific goals in mind. Like they're bred to be super good retrieving dogs. And even with that, there's subsets. You know, some of the dogs are bred to be field trial dogs. Some of them are bred to be cold water dogs. Some of them are bred to be field dogs down south, you know. So when you say Labrador Retriever, guys, there's just so many of them. I mean, you have hunting lines, and you have bench lines, you know, show lines, or what people refer to in America as English Labradors. But then you have just a whole ton of dogs like Bailey. And all they were bred to be is house dogs. So somebody down the street, Joe down the street, has a lab, and everybody's kids in the neighborhood likes them. And so Jim up the street has a lab, and everybody in the neighborhood likes them, and they breed them together, and they just produce puppies that everybody likes. You know, this is the kind of dog that you're going to most often see at the soccer game, or at the family reunion. It's just somebody talked to somebody that knew a person that had bred a couple of nice family Labrador Retrievers together. And that's where this dog fits in, right? And this is kind of what they'll look like. You'll notice that she doesn't have the pronounced blocky head or blocky structure of Tallulah, you know, and she has a lot of pigment. So when you say yellow, I mean, she's really, pretty yellow, you know. Now, a lot of Labrador snobs will kind of look at these dogs and call them backyard bred dogs. And I don't like to think of them like that. I like to think of them as being purpose bred. You know, like one of the things that pops up in the YouTube videos all the time is people talk about like working dogs, okay? So they have talk about working bloodline, the German Shepherd, or working bloodline Malinois, or a working Labrador Retriever. But let's just be honest, guys. How many people do you know that are still actually doing or living the lifestyles that led to the, you know, the breed development, right? Do you know a bunch of people with German Shepherds that are herding sheep? No, of course not. So what breed aficionados do is they just change the definition of work to suit themselves, right? And so if they have a German Shepherd, they'll dress some guys up in a suit or put a sleeve on him, and the dog chases and bites them, and they say, oh, well, that's a working bloodline. They'll do the same thing with the Malinois. By and large, the work that a dog does is it just hangs out with the family, you know? And so, you know, people that knock backyard Labrador Retrievers, I just think they're a little bit on the pretentious side, and they're not being honest with themselves, right? Because most Labrador Retrievers are just family dogs, right? And so if Jim down the street and Bob up the street have Labrador Retrievers that are good family dogs, and they breed them together, and the dogs are a little skinny, a little rangy, don't have the best looking heads, so what? They're still nice dogs, okay? So, like, I know in the comments below, somebody is going to talk about how Tallulah is proper, right? She's a proper Labrador Retriever, built properly. Yes, I mean, she looks cool. She's awesome. She's beautiful, right? Okay? And somebody's going to talk about how Bailey is a little bit skinny or whatever. Like, she's beautiful too, guys, because when you're in the dog business, like, pretty is as pretty does. And I don't have a bit of trouble managing Bailey. You know, I love her. She gets in the truck, she goes to the farm, she didn't cause any trouble. Is she the best retriever in the world? No. Is she the best fetcher in the world? No. But does she follow me around with a ball like my dog, No Name, or with a dummy, like trying to get me to fetch all the time? No, right? Is she a bull in the china shop when new kids come over and old people come over? No. She's, you know, polite and reserved, and she's just a good dog that waits to be petted, right? So, like all of these different style labs, guys, there's not a good one or a bad one, okay? There's one that suits the owner's expectations or doesn't suit the owner's expectations. So if you want to be successful and you're looking for one of these labs, whether it's a white lab or it's a hunting style lab, or it's just a, you know, run-of-the-mill Labrador Retriever that is going to live in your house and go to carpool line with you, okay? Make sure that when you talk to your breeder, you articulate your expectations. And an honest breeder will tell you whether their bloodlines are going to fit into your lifestyle or not. All right, we're going for a walk, and you might wonder why I have this chucket, because I never have a chucket, right? Well, most of the time when you see me doing retrieving, I'm doing retrieving with a dog that was bred to be a really good retriever, and so they bring it over and they hand it to me. Now, these chubbies, the way they look at retrieving is that sometimes they'll hand it to you, but most of the time they'll drop it on the ground and look at you like you're a peasant and you work for them and you're supposed to bend over and pick it up. So whenever I got these guys out and I'm going for a walk, right, I take my chucket. Now, what we're doing here is we've been coming out for a few days, and we've been trying to slowly work our way up into the forest. And the reason you have to slowly work your way up into the forest is because, like, there's lots of critters that live up here, right? So we'll pull up in our adventure area, and there'll be critters all over the place. And then when they see us pull up, of course, they run into the wood line. Well, if you try to go hiking with your dog and they don't really have much woods experience, well, then they'll see something. Especially here in Kentucky, where we have a lot of hills and hollers, they'll see something and they'll kind of get off down a holler and they'll get lost. And then you're trying to find them and they're trying to find you, and just is a big mess. So what we like to do is we like to come and walk the edge of the wood line, okay? So the first few days we come up, we'll start walking and we'll walk up and down the edge, and we'll kind of take and throw the retrieving item whenever the dogs come out of the wood line. So I like to let them go up there and start playing, and then I'll whistle for them, and when they come back, I'll throw the retrieving item as a reward, and it kind of just gets them in the habit of staying close. And you can see kind of how Tallulah is staying close to me because I have this chucket, right? And once I have the dogs to where we can be by the woods, right here on the wood line, and they'll kind of pay attention to me, then I know it's time to start hiking, right? And of course, what helps with this is I always bring a mentor dog that'll kind of keep the others on track. No name, come on! And so I feel like I have Tallulah in a good place in terms of paying attention. So we'll walk up our little path here. And this is going to give you a good chance to compare Tallulah, who is an English Labrador Retriever. That's what they call them in America. In reality, it's a kind of a show-bred retriever that was also not just bred to be pretty and have this blocky appearance, right? But to have kind of a puppy-like exuberant attitude and have a white coat, right? And so you'll hear people refer to this as a White English Labrador Retriever. And then No Name is a black Labrador Retriever, of course, that was bred for hunting. So when I'm walking these dogs, kind of some of the differences that you notice from the time that they're puppies is that the field-bred dogs are pretty much always like better at hanging around and looking at you and waiting for something to happen. Because when people are breeding field dogs, they're breeding dogs based on their desire to fetch and their willingness to do work in conjunction with a handler. So when No Name was bred, his breeder was primarily concerned with breeding a dog that was easy to train. In other words, it naturally paid attention. It was easy to motivate. In other words, it really liked attention, petting and praise, and it had an insatiable desire to retrieve. Now, Tallulah's breeder, primarily, people that breed that style of dogs, they're breeding dogs that kind of are happy, jolly dogs that have a very, like a very distinct look to them, And so you see she's very blocky, big head, big chest, short limbs, right? So she kind of looks like a block. I call her the potato a lot of the time. And when you can watch her and No Name moving, and you can see a distinct difference. No Name's energy level is higher, his endurance level is higher, and his tendency to turn around and pay attention and look at me and see if we're like going to do some work together is a lot more pronounced. Okay. Now it doesn't mean Tallulah's not an awesome dog. She is an awesome dog. She has tons of energy, but just for 5 minutes at a time. And one of the things that we have to really work on with the chubbies, with the English dogs, is that when we're out here, we have to really practice calling them, because they'll see something and they'll just kind of wander off a little bit, and then they get a little confused. So every time Tallulah goes, 50 or 60 yards away, I'll just call her back. And she's got a good recall because we've worked on it so much at the kennel. Now, No Name had a good recall from the time he was 8 weeks old, just because whenever, like, I signaled him and let him know that I'd like for him to come back, he anticipated that we had some work to do. And remember that big distinction, guys. The field-bred dogs are like, wow, you're calling me because we have work to do. And the bench-bred dogs are like, oh, you're calling me because you're going to do work for me? You're going to do something for me? Okay. That's just a big difference. That's an easy way to understand the difference between the types of dogs. Now, this little Jack Russell that's tagging along, that takes a lot more work during the formative period of their lives to get them to pay attention, because they were bred to run away from a handler and chase and kill stuff. So we've put a lot of work in with Hunter, but like if a squirrel runs through here, we're probably gonna lose him for a minute. It'll take us a little while to get him back. And that's just kind of the breed profile for you. It's what you have to accept. In terms of like this hike, what you'll notice is that Tallulah, she takes all the steps that No Name takes. What you won't notice in this video, but you would if you were up here hanging out with us, is that Tallulah's only going to make this hike one time, okay? Like, you can look at the labs and you can tell which ones of them are going to hike to the top of this bluff more than once, okay? So we're going to hike up here, and Tallulah's going to have a good time. She's going to come back and she's going to be super happy and super stoked. But then when we get back, she's going to go over and lay by the car, right? And she's going to go to sleep. And watch, she got out of my sight just a little bit. Hey, dogs! So I call them, and look, No Name comes first, but here comes Tallulah barreling down the path. So I give No Name a treat, and Tallulah wants the ball, but I'm just going to kind of tease her with the ball. Oh my gosh! Because I don't want her running off down this hill and not being able to get back up without help. All right. And then with Hunter, we're just kind of watching him, not trying to influence him too much, because he has his own agenda, doesn't he, Charlotte? Oh, Tallulah potato, what are you looking at? Now, cameraman, can you show them down in here? This right here, guys, this is where this is where I can sit here with a retrieving item and throw it to the bottom of this little hill here, you know, 20 times for no name. He'll go down there and come back up, and go down there and come back up. And Tallulah, we let her get down there the other day, and I literally had to go and push her potato-sized butt up this hill. So that's why we're not letting her go fetch the ball down there anymore. Now the dogs are kind of getting a little bit away. Get me a little recall practice in. Oh my gosh, good dogs. Very good dogs. You a good dog and you a good dog. Very good dogs. All right. Now, so we don't have to walk all the way to the top of the bluff, cameraman, because we got stuff to do at the cabin. But come down here, come over here, and let's kind of give them a little 360 of our adventure spot here. Oh, and this trail is awesome, guys, because all in all, we got you know, multiple miles of trails and hollers and down trees that we can use for real life obstacles. It's like the ultimate dog Montessori, and we've been having so much fun. But kind of come up and give them the 360 there, cameraman. Come around this way up here, and then turn. Kind of let them see. Very nice, perfect. All right, now I'll call the dogs and we'll go back to the cabin and get in the creek, do a little bit more work. Come on, dogs. Now, if I'm lucky, that Jack Russell will come back instead of going hunting on his own. Did he come? Yeah, awesome. Charlotte, you have done an excellent job training your Jack Russell. Oh. Oh. Show them that view right there, cameraman. Ooh, it is a little cave, isn't it?
Maybe a fox lives in it.
Oh. Yep.
Maybe it's out hunting.
Yeah. Reach your hand up in there and see if there's anything in there.
How about I reach a stick up?
Dun, 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 dun. Very good dogs. You good dogs. Huh?
Foxes would probably be afraid of all of us.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, when they hear us, when all the animals hear us clomping around out here, they don't go too far. They just get over there where we can't see them, you know. Oh, Tallulah, are you slowing down? Are you slowing down? You're a very good dog. Oh my gosh, you're a very good dog. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, you're very good dogs. Oh, Charlotte, you making it? Be careful, it's slippery down through here. There's a lot of rocks. And they're covered up by the leaves. One of the key things about, like, if you're gonna ever really go hiking or camping with your dogs, you have to put in the prep work, because it's really hard for the dogs to understand, like, just where to put their feet when they're walking in environments that are low traction environments. All right, so now I come out of the woods and I give them a big retrieve because we're out here in the open. And see, all this stuff's just predicated on patterns, guys. You just, I mean, dog training, regardless of the particular methodology that you use, it ultimately just boils down to, getting the dogs kind of in the habit of meeting your expectations. All right, now we'll head over to the creek and take the rest of the walk, and we'll wrap this video up. Good boy, Noni. Finish up our little nature hike in the creek. Now, Tallulah is a suburban dog, and that's where these English chubbies really excel. They're awesome for the suburbs because, like you can take them to carpool line with you, and then when the kids get home, you can go take them out in the cul-de-sac and play kickball. We can go over to the golf course and, just do fun stuff. And they're really neat because they're so excited for a few minutes at a time. But after a few minutes of kickball, they'll just kind of go over there and lay down and be good. Now, out here in the environment like I'm in, where I'm working all day, that's where you need this field-bred dog. It's got a little bit higher endurance level, or like this little Jack Russell right here, who's a relatively game-bred Jack Russell. He's a shorty, but he's game, and like he can go all day. So I say this in a lot of my videos, but it's just super important to make sure that you're upfront with your breeder about what type of dog that you need, so that they can make sure that the dog's going to fit in with your lifestyle. And the energy profile, guys, if everybody thinks about the personality, right? But the personality changes based on the conditions in which the dog is kept. So the energy profile is a super important thing to consider, And you might say, well, Stonnie, if Tallulah is kind of a suburban dog, then why are you spending so much time hiking with her and taking her in the creeks and doing those kinds of things? Well, here's why. Because people with suburban dogs, they take vacations, And when they take vacations, a lot of times nowadays, traveling with a dog, that's a pretty broadly accepted thing. So most of the resorts you go to and places that you rent, it's kind of cool to bring your dog if your dog minds well, But imagine if if you're going skiing, or you're going hiking or mountain biking or any of the things that people do now, and your dog has never been in an outdoor environment. They're cool in the suburbs, they're cool on the golf course, they're cool laying outside the Lulu store, but they've never been in a creek. And so when you try to walk down a creek like this, and the water's a little bit cold and the rocks are a little bit, maybe slippery or a little bit sharp, then the next thing you know, you're trying to carry a 70-pound potato, and about one day of that is enough for you to find a local boarding kennel and lock your fancy English cream or White Labrador in a little prison for the rest of your vacation. So our goal is to reduce the workload of people who live in the suburbs, by getting their dogs out and doing all the things that they can't do with them. And so dogs come spend a month with me, and it's a whole month of doing this kind of stuff here. And by the time they go home, there's nothing their owners are going to do with them. There's no situations their owners are going to put them in that is going to shake them, And the great thing about doing this kind of work here, Charlotte, be careful, it's deep. The great thing about doing this kind of work here is that we're able to not only knock out the nature work socialization, okay, but we have so much power equipment and cars and four-wheelers and motorcycles that we also can knock out the kind of stuff that dogs run into in an urban environment or a semi-urban environment. Now, to round this kind of training off, we also do what we call urban safaris. You know? So we'll take the dogs like to downtown Lexington or something and walk them around. But it's hard to make videos in those environments because as soon as you're making a video, like people come up and start talking to you or telling you they don't want to be on camera. And so it's not really conducive to making videos. But like these dogs excel in all those areas just because our basic operating premise is that we're going to each day engage in a series of complex mentally and physically challenging activities, you know, that forces them to learn how to adapt. And all growth, whether it's physical growth or mental growth, comes from adaptation. You know, you have to put your dogs in situations where their bodies and minds, you know, like are stressed a little bit, and that stress is what spurs the body to adapt. Okay, it's called an adaptation principle. Really fun, really cool. You're learning to adapt, aren't you? Learning to adapt and be quiet when Dad's making videos. That's awesome. Oh, did you get water in your boot? Oh no. Now see, so Charlotte got water in her boot, and that's a good learning experience, okay, because we're not too far from home. Imagine like if we had saved up our money and went to Yellowstone, and you know, Charlotte had never been in a creek before, so she gets water in her boots at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, our whole hike would be either uncomfortable for Charlotte or cut short because we had to go back and get her a new pair of boots. But by getting in the creek, now her, you know, the wet feet, that's going to cause her mind to adapt and say, oh, I need to make sure that when I'm walking across the creek, I'm choosing a path that, you know, doesn't lead to me getting water in my boots or falling down. The cameraman actually, she could tell you some stories about having to learn to adapt because she, to this day, still has a tendency to try to walk across water that's deeper than her boots. And if you guys want to see somebody mad, you would see the cameraman with her fancy La Chameau boots full of water.